All right, good morning. As I mentioned yesterday was a nice, easy daf. Today, I spoke too soon. It's gonna make up for it. I'll come back the other way. So we're gonna actually pick up where we left off from, and we're gonna go from there. So we were discussing yesterday. We asked. There was like two dots at the bottom of Samak Vav and Beis. So we said, okay, we learned the Talmud that it's done by Tuma, and we learned that from the Korban Pesach. So how do you know the Korban Pesach is brought Betuma? All right. When is the Korban Pesach brought Betuma? The Korban Pesach is brought Betuma. Okay. And I'm going to give you the conclusion in which we know, and the Gemara is basically working off of that. The Gemara is brought Betuma when you have most of the Bnei Yisrael, the Rov, when they are Tamei Tumas Meis. Okay, now there's different ways to be Tamei, right? There's a Matzora, right? A person who has tsaras. There's a Zav, right? Person who has some sort of ailments, seminal drip. Such a person is Tamei. So the pasuk, as we mentioned yesterday, so it says, how do you know that we brought one suggestion and we deflected that, and we're actually going to bring that one back today, but I'll explain when we get there. But the second was it says over there, it says you send from the machana any person called sarua, the kol zav, the kol tami nefesh. So we said over there. So just say tami meis. Tami meis is the least, and we're going to explain a little later on today, is the least tame of between a person who's tame, tumas meis, versus a zav and a metzora, right? Remember, a person tame tumas meis because he touched a dead body. So he's the least. So just say he has to leave the machana. Why do you got to say all three of them leave the machana, right? So it must be, rather, because I'm to teach you, there's a time when we tell the other two to leave the machana, but not a person who's tamei meis. And when is that? So that is during the time of Korban Pesach, when most people are tamei tumas meis. Then he doesn't have to leave, but the zav and the metzora also have to leave. So that's where we left off yesterday. Amar Abaye. We are the top of Samach Zayin Amud Al, 3 lines from the top. Amar Abaye, if the whole svara is the source is because why does it say people in general, nothing to do with the Korban Pesach? It says in general, everyone has to leave the machane, tamei meis, zav, metzora. Why do you say so? Our source was just say tamei meis. We can learn the other two. So Elamai, it must be that the other two, right? There are times when they're also sent out, and tamei meis is not. When is that? That's when most people are tamei for the time of the Korban Pesach. So Amar Abaye, ihachi lemanami. Use the same svar and just say yomer zav tamei meis and val yomer metzora. Why doesn't just say a zav and a tamei meis, right? Have to leave the machana and don't say the metzora. Vani yomer zav nishtalech metzora lo koshken. The zav has to leave the machana, right? In general, certainly a metzora doesn't. Rather, it must be a time when a metzora is sent out of the machana, but a zav and a person who's tamei meis is not sent out. And when is that? Is that Pesach haba b'tuma? That's Pesach haba b'tuma. So according to the svar that you want to say, so since there's three things listed, just list the two of them. Maybe only the metzora is the one who does not bring a b'tuma. But if you have a rov who are tamei meis and a zav, the zav is included, he can go ahead and bring it the Korban Pesach, even though everyone else is tamei meis and he's a zav, he can go ahead and bring his Korban Pesach. But we know that's not the case. So if you're going to say, maybe that is the halacha, maybe a zav does bring, he doesn't have to go ahead and wait till Pesach Sheni. He can bring it along with the majority of Bnei Yisrael who's matami tumas meis. But tonight we're going to Mishnah Pesach haba b'tuma v'yechel mimeno zavim the zavos nidos v'yoledes v'imachol b'turun. That the Korban Pesach is brought b'tuma because most people are tamei. So during that year, however, if you're not just tamei from tumas meis, but let's say you're also a zav or a woman's a nida or your lettuce, she just recently gave birth, then they do not bring with everybody else. Rather, they have to wait till Pesach Sheni. But if they do so therefore we see, right, that a zav never brings it. So you can't say that's the reason. And if that's the case, right, if they do go ahead and eat, we'll also analyze this last part, they are putter. Now, they're putter from even though they went and had kachim while they were tamei. Nevertheless, they're putter from kares, and we'll soon see why that is. So Elo Amar Abaye, rather Abaye says, okay, forget that source. Let's go back to the original source that we said. The original source, which we said yesterday, right, it says ish kiyet tamei lenefesh. So he said, when somebody is tamei, he has to go ahead and he has to wait till Pesach Sheni. It sounds like only when a man, an individual, is Tameh, he waits till Pesach Sheni. But if you have a majority that are Tameh, then they bring it all Betuma. Then everyone, since there's a majority, then it overrides the Tuma. So that's the source. So then we said, maybe what it really means, right? The way we deflected yesterday was by saying that, oh no, maybe it means that only a person, right, waits till the second. But if it's a majority, not only do they not bring it now, they don't bring also Pesach Sheni. They never bring it. They don't bring the Korban Pesach that year. So that was the deflection. Perhaps that was the suggested shot in the pasuk. Sim Kain, Dichtav Rachmana Ishish Ki Yatame. Why did you say when a person becomes tummy? Lenefesh lamali. Why did it say when a person becomes tummy from touching a body, from touching a dead body, from touching a corpse, right? And if you're going to say, oh, maybe he comes to teach you that. Maybe it only means a person is tummy mace. That person goes to Pesach Sheni in general, an individual, but any other tummy he does not. We learn in the Mishnah, maybe because the pasuk says the person who's tummy mace or he's far away, he brings Pesach Sheni. So maybe it's bedafka that only then does such a person bring such a person wait till Pesach Sheni. But let's say on Pesach, or when it comes to Pesach, he was matame tumas. He was matame tumas zav, or let's say he was matame tumas sheretz, right? So maybe you think, oh, since he wasn't matame tumas mace, he had a different type of tuma. Therefore, right, we'll say that he does. He would not have the opportunity to go ahead and bring the Korban Pesach. So Tamalemar. Therefore, it says ishish, right? So therefore, it says ishish to anybody who's tummy for every reason, not just tummy mace. If for whatever reason you missed for Pesach Rishon on the 14th of Nisan, you can wait 30 more days and bring it at Pesach Sheni. If that's the case, Lenefesh, the Kasiv Rachmana Lamali. If that's the case, why does it say the word Lenefesh? Ish nidchel lePesach Sheni ve'ein tzibur nidchel lePesach Sheni. Rather, the source is what comes to teach you is that only an individual is pushed off until Pesach Sheni. However, the tzibur is never pushed off Pesach Sheni. Ella avdi betuma, and they only do betuma, and v'chi avdi betuma, and that tuma which we say they go ahead and they bring it betuma, that's only betame mace. That's only if they're tame mace. In other words, if the majority is metame tumas mace from touching a corpse, i.e., during, let's say, during the vaya of Moshe Rabbeinu, whatever it was, right? It's a question over there in that case. Only tumas mace about shar tumos lo avdi. Then, but if other tumos, or if you have, let's say, the majority is for whatever reason metame tumas zav, right? Then, nevertheless, that would not be pushed off to Pesach Sheni. In other words, that would not be pushed off, and they say, okay, they can go ahead and bring a tuma. Rather, since they missed the first time, they have to go ahead and bring the second time. Fine. So that was the source for our rules of basically if majority. There's rules like this: if you can't bring it, if you're tummy on Pesach Rishon, then for whatever reason, doesn't matter if it's zav, mitzora, sheretz, tummy mace, then you go ahead and you bring it as an individual on Pesach Sheni. However, if the most of the tzibur is dafka tame tumas mace, then that overrides, and they all bring on Yud Dal Nisan on the first. It overrides the tum, and they bring on the first. Fine. Amar Rav Chizda, mitzora. So we mentioned before the second source which we deflected, the one we left off yesterday. We started with today. We said the pasuk says they're told to go outside the machana. So you say mitzora shenichnas lifnim mechitzasai pater. A mitzora that enters, he comes inside the machna is pater. Shnamar. The pasuk says bodad yeshev mechutz lamachna mashav. So it says so a mitzora who comes inside within a certain machna. There's three. There's the machna shechina, machna leviyah, machna Yisrael. So the Mitzora who enters the one where he's not supposed to be in, right? We'll soon see who's thrown out from where. So he's actually supposed to be outside all the machanas, even machanas. So if he enters, he does not get malchus. Shnei as the pasuk says, Bodod yeshe mechutz lamachana mashavo. He should go ahead and sit out there. Now, when you have a pasuk in asay, and even though there's a lois asay that you should not be inside the mitame, since there is an asay, there's an action for one to do, then this is considered to be hakos of nitkol liasay. This pasuk basically is a lav nitak liasay. Now, lav nitak liasay, the classic the classic example is that thou shall not steal. Now, normally, if there is a thou shall not, you go ahead and you get malchus. However, if there is an action which is written in the Torah for you to go ahead and do it to remedy that, such as return the lost object. So therefore, even if you steal and don't return it, right, that lav was lav anitik la'aseh, that lav was given to be fixed up by an aseh, and therefore you do not get punished with malchus. So to over here, you shouldn't go ahead and enter into the machana. And if you do, go outside and sit alone. So since they go outside and sit alone, right, is teaching, giving you an aseh, that's considered aseh anitik lav anitik la'aseh, and therefore there is no penalty of malchus in this case. So the Gemara says, it says over here, beferish, a person has tzaras who enters inside the machane, barbai, he gets 40 malchus or 39 malchus. And Zavim, and also Zavim. Now they are actually kicked out of Machane Leviyah. They have to go out and stay in Machane Yisrael, right? So they're kicked out. Basically, there's 3 camps, right? So the Metzora is even kicked out of the least Kadosh camp, i.e. Machane Yisrael, and they have to go completely outside the camp. A Zav is allowed. Normally, he's in person's in 2. He has to go into camp 3. All right, so he's camp 3. So he's kicked out of Machane Leviyah. So if he enters into Machane Leviyah as a Zav or Zavin, they get malchus. Utami Meis, and a person's Tami Meis can no longer be in the Machane Shechina. He has to go into the Machane Leviyah. So Tami Meis, mutter likanis leMachane Leviyah. It's mutter to be there. Tami Meis bilvad amru ela afilu Meis Hatzma. Even Meis Hatzma can go ahead and be in that one. Shneimar is it's like Vayichai Moshe Hatzma Yosef. Imo Muchitzaso, right? And Moshe took with him the bones of Yosef, right? The mace, right? And into Machane Leviyah. So you see, Machane Leviyah to mace is allowed to go ahead and be there. He just can't be in Machane Shechina, but can be in Machane Leviyah. So what do you see from this brisa? This brisa clearly started off with a Metzora gets malchus. We just said before that Rav Chisda just said that Metzora does not get malchus because it's a lav nitik la'aseh of the pasuk of Badad Yeshev Mechutz L'Machane. So my answer is tonight. It's machlokes tonight. Titania learned a brisa. It says Badad Yeshev. Now it says over there he should go ahead and sit alone. Levado Yeshev. He has to go. The Metzora has to go ahead and sit alone. Shelo Yotami Acherim Yeshimo. In other words, even the other types of tuma should not sit with him. Why? What do you think? You might think that all who were sent out, person's Tamei Meis, right, is sent out from Machane Shechina, a Zav that we said is sent out from Machane Leviyah, and the Metzora is sent out from Machane Yisrael. So maybe all 3 had to go outside completely Machane, and all of them go out all 3 Machanes, right? You might think that. Therefore, it says V'lo yitamu es machaneim. You should not go ahead and time machaneim. Litain machane lazeh umachane lazeh divrei Rabbi Yehuda. So therefore, it says that since it says multiple machaneim, it says machaneim in plural. So therefore, each one has to leave a different machane. So therefore, we see that you have to leave this camp and go to a different one. Each one has their own designated camp, i.e., Tamei Meis has to leave the Shechina and go to the Machane Leviyah. The Zav has to leave the Machane Leviyah and goes to the Machane Yisrael. And the Metzora leaves the Machane Yisrael and has to go Chutz LaMachane completely. So therefore, each one has their own separate. Each one has their own separate machane. So that was Divi Rabbi Yehuda. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. So that's how, because he learns it from the word Badad Yeshev. So he used the word Badad Yeshev for that reason. And Rabbi Shimon Omer, no, we don't need Badad Yeshev, right? Harehu Omer, it says Vayishluchu min hamachana kol tzarua v'kol zav v'kol tamei lenefesh. It lists 3 people. Yomer Tamei Meis. You might think Tamei Meis, Val Yomer Tamei Zav, right? Maybe if you don't say a person who is Tamei Meis, right? If a person who's Tamei Meis has to leave the machana, so then you don't even have to say to Zav, right? Because he's more than the Omer. And I can go ahead and make a kavachaymer, right? Tamei Meis and mishtachim zavin lakol shkein, right? If Tamei Meis, which is the least amount of tuma, has to leave the machana, certainly a zav has to leave. So lama nemar zav. So why did the pasuk include, right? Kol tzura v'kol zav. L'itein lo machana shia, to say there's a second camp. In other words, the 2 aren't basically Tamei Meis has to leave a certain camp, but the zav has to leave a second camp. And vayomer zav yal yomer metzora. And then you can do the same logic. Say the word zav, which is let's say the middle ground of tamei. And don't say Metzora. I would say illogical. Zav mishtachim Metzora lokol shkein. If the Zav has to leave, a Metzora obviously has to go ahead and leave. So Lama Nemar Metzora. If that's the case, why does it say over there Metzora? The Telo Machal Shlishi tell you that there's a third camp that he has to leave, and that is. So the Mitzvah has to leave all three machanas. So we see over here that from these three psukim, right, by the fact that it lists all three of them, it says all have to leave. We see each one has to leave an individual camp, and they can't be together. So we already know that together. We don't need the pasuk of Badad Yeshev. If that's the case, there was a reason why it says Badad Yeshev. Therefore, it's coming to tell you that it is considered to be basically a lav hanitek le'aseh. So therefore, that basically removes the malchus. So therefore, that's the machlokes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon is whether you use the pasuk of badad yeshev. And according to Rabbi Shimon, it's not used at all. So therefore, it's coming to teach you that it's a lav hanitek le'aseh. And therefore, according to Rabbi Shimon, you would not get malchus for because it's a lav hanitek le'aseh. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, it's used for another reason to teach you that each that the Metzora, Tamimeis, and the Izav each go to their own machana, and therefore the pasuk is used for that, and is not used to tell you that it's to fix up, right, the lav of entering to the machana, and therefore, according to him, according to Rabbi Yehuda, you would get malchus. Fine. Now, that was part two. Now the next part. So in the brisa, right, we had in the brisa we had an assumption, right, that there's tamimes, right, is the lowest level of tuma, then zav, and then Metzora. Now we have to go explain. So my chuma de zav mitami meis. Why do you say that the zav is more chomer than tumas meis? Right? Shechein tuma yaitza Allah migufo. Because we see by the zav that he goes ahead and he has he himself is tame in order to go ahead and be mitame other things and other people. Which Tamimeis doesn't have the severity of that. So the rest is Adarabba. Tamimeis Chamash Shakain Tarin Hazash Shvi. Well, what do you mean? The Tamimeis has to go ahead and be sprinkled by the Paraduma on days 3 and 7. So maybe Tamimeis is more machmer. So Makra Tame. So therefore, when it says if it just said Tame, it says V'chol Tame, right? The pasuk says Kol Tzareh V'chol V'chol Tame. V'chol includes others, not just Tamimeis. Who does v'chol tami? L'rabba is tamei sheretz. To include someone who's tamei sheretz. So when it says, right, they're matame tumas, they're matame, it's not just tamei mace, which requires 7 days with and 2 of them which have sprinkling. Rather, it's a sheretz, which there's no waiting 7 days and have to sprinkle. You don't have that by tumas sheretz. So therefore, since it has tumas sheretz, therefore the rule, this group of tamei doesn't have the chumrah. And therefore, the zav chomer tumas sheretz, and therefore the zav is more chomer than the tumah of tumas sheretz. My chumrah, and what's the chumrah that a zav has over a tumas sheretz? So kadamran, like you said over there, that the zav is tamei megufo. So adarabba, maybe you can say sheretz is chomer, right? Shachain metami ba'inus, because a sheretz, a person unknowingly or unwillingly comes in contact with a dead sheretz, he is tamei, as opposed to a zav. Let's say there is some sort of outside reason, right, when it comes to a zav, right? So the person is not tamei. If you can go and say, oh, maybe it was from another action, outside occurrence, maybe that was the reason why, and therefore he's madam tamei tuma zav. So maybe that tuma sheretz is more machmir. So my answer is Amri. They say ki haigav no zav nami tami b'inus. So he says no. There are opinions that a zav can also become tamei tumas onus. The Rav Huna, like Rav Huna, Rav Huna, Ria Rishena Shalza Matami Bonus. He says even the Ria Rishena, if it was some sort of accidental occurrence, right, perhaps from some sort of outside stimulus, right? So therefore that does make one tamei and no difference in the sheretz, and therefore we see that a person who is matami tumas zav is more chomer than tumas sheretz, and therefore we see that there's a kol shekain that says tuma, there's a kol shekain to zav. Fine, and then we said the third level is Metzora. So why is a Metzora considered more chomer than zav? Because a person who's a Metzora, right, he has to go ahead and basically let his hair grow, and he has to go ahead and tear his clothes, and he's also b'tashmish shemita, which does not apply by his zav. So Gemara says, "Adarab zav chomer shechem matami mishkav moshav." Right, he's matami mishkav moshav. He sits on something, and someone else is sitting on the same thing, or matami kli cheres beheset, or he can be matami even earthenware vessels by tumas hesed, which is basically if he supports the weight of that kli. So you see that perhaps that the zav is more tamei than mitzorah because he has certain ways of passing on tuma that a mitzorah doesn't have. So Makra, so he says, no. Therefore it says, when the pasuk says zav, it's not just this type of zav, rather it says v'chol zav, any type of ziva. The rabbah is balkari, to include a balkari. So therefore the rule of zav is not just a zav himself, but even a zav and a balkari. U'mitzorah chomer balkari. And the mitzorah is chomer balkari because the balkari is not matame through tumas hesed. Umay chumra. And so what's the chumra that mitzorah has over a balkari? So he said, like we said, right, when we said over there, that it requires primo asu tashmish amita, right? You have to let your hair grow out, you have to tear your clothes, and there's no tashmish amita. So adirabba balkari chamer. Maybe you can say balkari is more chamer than mitzorah. Why is that? Because any amount of keri, right, any amount of semen can go ahead and be matami, make a person a balkari, as opposed to mitzorah. He has to have a certain shear of the gris or whatever spot on his body. So the Gemara says no, not all opinions hold that. The time within the Brisa of Rav Nasan, Rabbi Yishmael, Zav tzerich bechasimas pi'ama. So we say over there that the balkari, it's not a mash, it's not any amount. It has to be a certain amount, right? Which is the end of the pi'ama, one's member, right? So if it's that size, right, by the tip. Therefore, there is a mashir. So just like Matzorah, so therefore there is no more chumrah by a balkari versus a Matzorah. V'lohaydu did not agree. V'ikish they balkari lezav, and therefore we because over there say that a balkari is similar to a zav, and therefore since a Matzorah is more chamer than a balkari, so therefore a Matzorah is also more chamer than a zav, and therefore you can make a kal chamer. And then the Gemara says, that which we say, v'chol serul lamali. So we already said v'chol tamei includes the sheretz. V'chol zav includes a balkari. So v'chol serul lamali. So what does that include? V'chol serul types of what kind of tzaras are there? So lamali. So because of kol zav, ksiv nami kol tzarua. This says kol zav. It also says kol tzarua, but there is no other type of tzarua person included with a tzarua who has to go ahead and leave the machna. Fine. That was that. Yeah. Breaking up.
In the end of the day, Metzora does not excrete. Zav and Balkar excrete, meaning they emit. Where Metzora, it can be all over his body, but if you're not in contact, you're safer.
Right.
So perhaps Balkar and Zav are more than.
Right.
No?
All right. Yeah. So what you're saying is correct, but the way a balkari transmits tuma to another person is through contact. And now when it comes to a zav, you could be sitting on the same bench or same bed and not next to the person, but since you're both being supported, you would be matame. So there's a chumrah by zav, but when it comes to a balkari, you don't have that. It has to be in contact. So enach might not be contact with the body, but we're not referring to the keri itself, we're referring to the balkari, the individual. So an individual who is tameh, he can only be matame other people, right? When through contact, which would be the same as a metzora. So there is enachanami. You're right. That something could come from the balkari that could be matame some other person, even if he leaves, if the carry's on the ground. But that's not the balkari. That's the carry itself, and therefore there's still a chumrah when it comes to a metzora versus a balkari.
Okay.
So going back to what we said earlier, we said there's the machlokes tonight whether one gets malchus. Because the question is a lava nitak lase of Yeshev Badar, he has to go ahead and sit alone outside the machna. So as the machlokes as to whether the pasuk was used for another reason, something else. So Rabbi Yehuda Shapir come Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon said, good, right? He said he had the extra pasuk. He didn't need the pasuk. He could have proved it without saying it because since it says 3 people, right, they have to leave. So therefore, we learn from there. Each one has their own camp. They're not together. So Gemara says, no, he actually used it for some other reason. Look at the time we learn in Bryce. Rabbi Eliezer Reimer, Yachol Dachu Zavim Mitzari V'Nichnas Ezer Pesach Haba B'Tuma. You might think that is Zavim Mitzara. If they go ahead and they enter into the Ezer and Pesach, it was 1 year when they have the majority of Matami Tumas Mace, and therefore everyone brings the Batuma. And everyone brings Matuma. A person said, "Oh, I'm a Zav, but I can bring Matuma." Mistakenly, he thinks that. Yachol Yuchayav, and you might think he's Chayav. Tamaloymar. Therefore, it says Vayishluchu Min Achana Kol Tzura V'Chol Zav V'Chol Tami LeNefesh. It says there you send him outside any Tzurua or Zav and any Tami Nefesh. Right? When Tamei Mesim are sent out, right, i.e. they can't go ahead and bring Zavim Mitzar Mishtachim. So too, they go ahead and they also have to leave the Mikdash. However, ain't Tamei Mesim Mishtachim. But however, if it's during a time when a person's Tamei Mesim does not leave the Mikdash, i.e. during a year when the majority is Matami Tumas Meis, then then they don't have to go ahead and leave. They can't be Yaitse, the mitzvah of Karban Pesach, but if they go ahead and they eat, right, from the Karban Pesach, they are not chayiv because that's not during a time when the Tamei Meis is also sent away from the Mikdash. So Omar Mar, we said earlier, it says Zav, V'chol Zav, L'Rabbas Ba'ker. So it says Zav, we said the word V'chol Zav includes not only a person who is a Zav, but even someone who's a Balkari. And the style of Rabbi Yechon is a proof of Rabbi Yechon, Rabbi Yechon, Mechilois Niskadshu Ubalkari Mishtera Chus L'Shtei Machanos, right? The tunnels under the Mikdash were not Tame, right? Or excuse me, we're not sanctified, we're no liskashu, and therefore that was a way for a person who became a balker in the mikdash. He can go through the tunnels and then leave a balker mishterach chutz l'shtei machnas. So therefore, he takes the tunnels all the way out, not only out of the machane, right, of the mikdash, which is the machane shechina, but even the machane levia, right, which is the temple mount and the base of mikdash area. So even to take him outside of there of the temple of Harabayis, even over there, he would be sent out. So therefore, we see that the Balkari is just like a Zav, that he's sent out of two machnas, not just one machna. So Meisvei says Balkari b'maga sheretz. So it says a Balkari is just like a person who touches a sheretz. Samai la l'machanoisam. Doesn't that mean he's just like him? In other words, they're sent out of the same machna. Just like a person who touches a machna, who touches a sheretz, he's only removed from the machna shechina and is allowed to be in the machna levia. So too, maybe a Balkari can be. He only has to be outside of the Machna Shechina and Machna Levia, but he doesn't have to leave the Machna Levia. And you just said before, he doesn't just have to leave the inner camp, he has to leave the inner two camps. So which one is it? So he says, no, that which we said, the Balkir is like a Magav Sheretz, that's Lutumasam. That means it's for its Tuma. So Gemara says, Lutumasam, hi Tumas Erev Ksibe. Both of them know, it already says Tumas Erev Ksibe. We already know that each one of them is a person who touches a Sheretz is only tummy for that night, right, for one day until the night. And just like a Balkari is tummy until the night, right? So to say, we already know that. So Eric Sibes, rather it must be. It's teaching us that they're same when it comes to machane. Same as comes to machane, it sounds like the Balkari also that can stay in the machane levia. Gemara says, no, that's not true. Really, the Balkari has to not only leave the machane shechina, he even has to leave the machane levia. So why does it compare Balkari to sheretz? And lo yom tumasam, how come to teach something else? The Balkari, Kamaga sheretz, and the Balkar is just like the touching of a sheretz. Maga sheretz matami ba'inus, just like a person's matami b'sheretz is maga ba'inus. Even if accidentally he touches the sheretz, he's considered itame. Al Balkari, sotu Balkari matami ba'inus. Sotu, if it was a complete accident, it was from something else on the outside that caused him to become a Balkari. We will also say he is tame, just like a person who touches a sheretz is also tame. All right. Shkoyach, everybody. We'll stop here at the bottom. It's a very difficult daf. Hopefully tomorrow, which I don't know what brings, but hopefully tomorrow will be a bit easier. We will see. Everyone have a wonderful day, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Shkoyach.